So first of all, let's take a look at some of the simpler tasks I've carried out on this model since recording the last video. As I mentioned last time, the curved bits of the exhausts were snapped off and there wasn't really anything I could substitute them with, so instead I have used the inside of some biros and drilled those into the top of the stacks and inserted those instead to essentially complete the look. It's not curved, but I would say it still looks considerably better than just the flat top of these. The antenna here are pieces of wire in 4 layers of plastic card, just drilled through and then stuck to the side of the tank. Now, on the bottom of the tank, some more work has been done. The melted off hinge has been replaced with a piece of plastic card. I've also chosen to replace these rivets because they were slightly melted or just flattened out. The craters left by the glue have been filled in with milliput and wet sanded flat to be flush with the surface of the plastic. I was careful not to damage the plastic itself. Regarding the bolter cupola, I have made some flat plates to replace them out of card. I've also added some rivets to these, which, much like the replacements on the hatches, are made from little balls of resin you can get by cutting apart a water filter. And these snap into place nicely. With this, essentially the work on the bottom of the tank is done. The first thing I did with the gunner's hatch was to remove the melted blob from the base of the mounting arm. But of course, this in itself doesn't really help when trying to figure out what was supposed to be there in the first place, because the problem is that it's missing. Now, to further help me with trying to figure this out, I took another look through the codices. Well, this is the only image of a Vindicator I found last time. More on that later. Several other vehicles also use this driver's hatch, gunner's hatch, so obviously there would be images of this weapon in other codices. So in the Space Marines Codex on pages 30 and 31, there is that image on the Ultramarines Predator, and there is this larger and easier to see image on page 31 of an Imperial Fists Predator Annihilator. So those have helped immensely trying to figure out what to build up on the hatch. Now, there are several more images of just the Stormbolter being used in various contexts, such as on this very Rhino, where you can see the original 2nd edition bolter cupola just had this slapped on top. And in fact, there's various uses of this Stormbolter throughout all the codices. That I don't think would have come initially from the instruction manuals. These bolt guns are in fact from the Space Marine bike kit. Now, regarding my claim in the previous video of this being the only image of a Space Marine Vindicator in the Space Marine codices from 3rd edition, I must now retract that statement, for it is wrong. During my search for further reference material to build up the gunner's hatch, I have come across page 18 of the Armageddon Codex, which has an image of a Storm Giant's Vindicator. Now, of course, this is a much smaller image, much lower resolution in fact, so the Dark Angel's image is easier to work with. However, some peculiarities of this Vindicator is that the gunner's hatch is actually from a modern vehicle sprue with the current storm bolter as well as the current hatch at the top. Now, of course, I could also do this because I do have those pieces lying around, but I would like it to be more authentic. However, there is the argument that it would still be authentic to 3rd edition because quite clearly it was already being done. So what I've come up with essentially for the mounting arm on the hatch is this piece. Made out of card, of course. I just prefer to work with it because I can cut it with scissors. And it is a recreation of that part there. As you can see. Also using that image there and this image down here to figure out that the underside is supposed to be hollow. Now, of course, once I remove the broken off knobs that are still on the hatch piece, this will fit there nicely and snugly. I just really didn't see the point of trying to preserve these and make the part so that it would fit around the edges of the broken pieces because it's too much work, and I would say it would be a lot less stable. Now, as for the storm bolter, so in the previous video I had mentioned my intention of using an Imperial Guard storm bolter on here because it's from roughly the same era. However, having taken a look at the actual Imperial Guard storm bolters I have from the vehicle kits, I no longer believe this to be the case. Let me show you what our current options are if I don't opt for trying to make one of the ones in the picture from scratch. So first of all, this storm bolter with some very large ammo boxes. Oh, look at that mold slip. That's the kind of quality issue Forge World sends replacement kits for these days. Just shows you how far plastic has come. Oh, that's some nasty flashing there as well. But of course, I'm not here to evaluate the quality of old Games Workshop parts manufacture. So this one I would say is much too large. Not just because of the ammo boxes, just in general. Also, I'll show you in a second another reason. So this is the storm bolter from the Chimera kit. And it is very similar to the other one. Slightly smaller ammo boxes. And the same issue. It's just too big. It would completely hide the Space Marine gunner. Now, as we saw in the Armageddon Codex, using modern Space Marine vehicle storm bolter might be an option that we resort to in the end. It is still a bit too large, but it's something that I could work with. And the fourth option I currently have is this storm bolter from the Armored Container kit, which, funnily enough, is actually the closest match to the old storm bolter. Yes, it still does have the old... It still has the ammo boxes, which that storm bolter didn't. However, unlike all of these, it has a single grip at the back. It has a single rail coming across the bottom, and the single sight at the top. Of course, the Space Marine one also has the single sight at the top, but I just feel it would be out of place on this model. So, of course, in order to use this, the ammo boxes would need to be removed, and I would have to build that part there as well out of card to make a mounting point, and just extend out this rail to be a bit thicker, a bit wider. Of course, it wouldn't have the chunky barrels, but all in all, I would say this is the closest part that we currently, or the closest part I currently have in my bits box to the original. Now, of course, the other option is trying to scratch build one. And while I intend to definitely do that with the mounting part and the rail, I am not entirely confident in my abilities to build the entire thing out of scratch. Although I could use some biro insides for the barrels. Anyway, so yeah, as you can see in all these images... Oh shit, maybe not. No, it's got a dual grip. It has a dual grip. I am sorry, I take that back. But of course, the two grips are very close to each other. Okay, so adding a dual grip to the armored container storm bolter might be the way to go after removing the ammo boxes, because they would be in the way. Okay, so what I've done is, first of all, I've made the mounting point there, also out of card, and I've taken the armored container storm bolter, added the piece that I rescued from the molten blob that was on here, which I'd figured out was in fact part of the mounting rail there, so I used that to approximate the size for everything else around here. A piece of plastic card for the under rail, rivets, some more card, of course. I've taken some Forge World pin tool mounted weapon handles, removed the middle section and glued them in place for the dual grip, which is actually quite similar on the model there, although of course the plastic ones were considerably thinner. Now, when put together, this will then look... It's surprisingly difficult doing this on camera because I'm looking at it through my phone. It's not where my hands actually are. Well, crap. Assembled, this looks like so. I would say it's fairly similar to the original storm bolter. Of course, somewhat different proportions, but overall the effect it gives is not dissimilar. I would still say that this is the closest out of the storm bolters I had to hand, and it works rather quite well. And just quickly to compare the model and the image, I would say it is rather successful in giving the same profile to the model overall. Anyway, thank you for joining me for this week's installment of the restoration log. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm working on a turntable so that I don't have to do this manually in future videos. Hopefully by the time I start painting the model, it should be ready. Speaking of painting, all that really needs doing before I get to that stage is figuring out what to do with the cannon. I hope you will join me next week as we find out the answer together.